Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So today, a big chunk of news hit the game. Some huge changes to the game were, I wouldn't say announced today, but the developers presented us with a big list of nerfs and buffs that they are considering putting into the game. And when they say considering, that usually means it is going to come into the game unless there's some huge outcry from the player base about it. So I think these changes that they're presenting today are very likely and probably going to be implemented into the game. So let's go ahead and get started. There's all kinds of changes to classes, and a lot of abilities that I've complained about in the past have been addressed. A lot of abilities I feel are obviously overpowered or obviously underpowered have been hit here. So a lot of big name issues. So as you can see, here's the actual post from the forums. If you would like to read this post yourself, I'll put the link below in the description. Let's just start at the top. The first big item is Holy Sword for Paladins. This is now a spell that affects the Paladin and buffs whatever melee weapon is being wielded in your main hand. So this is a big change. This used to be to any weapon that you were holding, but now it's only in your main hand. This has mainly been changed. It seems to have been changed only mainly to address help bring down some of the two-weapon fighting builds that have had really big DPS according to the calculations. Holy Sword no longer persists on your weapon, but instead buffs the melee weapon you're holding in your main hand. So yes, it does still buff two-handed weapons. It no longer affects missile weapons. Huge change. So that change really is going to, I wouldn't say kill, but really bring down some of the Holy Sword ranged builds, like 14 Paladins, 6 Rangers, stuff like that. That has been kind of taking advantage both of Holy Sword and of the revamped Ranger trees. It can also, Holy Sword can no longer be used to buff offhand weapons or shields. If you change weapons, the spell will drop off the unequipped weapon and instead be applied to the newly equipped weapon. So that's a big change to Holy Sword. Let's go with, next is Blood Strength, which is the healing enhancement in the Barbarian Ravager tree. This portion of this enhancement that heals the user when they kill an opponent now has a 1-second internal cooldown. This is a very much needed change. The problem with blood strength is barbarians could exploit it by just sitting there and cleaving, and because you could proc healing for any hit, the ability would often give the barbarian massive amounts of healing by them just sitting in huge waves of mobs and just cleaving. So now that this enhancement has a 1-second cooldown, you can't do that anymore. You're only going to get a healed 1 time per second. So that's going to make healing a little bit more tricky for our barbarians. They're not going to be able to be as aggressive. They'll have to be a little more careful in certain situations. Next is Critical Rage, Barbarian Ravager. The bonus to critical threat range is now a competence bonus, so it will stack with more things. Two-weapon fighting animations have now been fixed, so there's no longer a weird jump on the 4th animation. This has made the 4th attack slightly quicker. Okay, that's actually a buff. But to help address this, they have nerfed the two-weapon fighting feats. Two-weapon fighting no longer grants melee power. Improved two-weapon fighting no longer grants melee power. Also, greater two-weapon fighting feat no longer grants melee power. And because the animation is changing, the animation change has increased the DPS, so this reduction is in part to account for that, but also because the developers have explained that, according to their calculations, two-weapon fighting right now has a significant advantage in DPS over single-handed fighting and two-handed fighting builds. Next is double shot. Values over 100% now have a chance of producing a third attack. The chance is equal to the amount the value exceeds 100. A double shot value of 130, for example, would always produce 1 extra shot and have a 30% chance to produce a third shot. So this is actually a buff to double shot. They're removing the cap, so it's actually possible to get a third shot now. Double strike, they mentioned, will still cap at 100 for technical reasons, so this is only going to be a buff to range builds. Next is repeating crossbow and double shot. They fixed a bug where double shot was not being reduced for repeating crossbows, so essentially that's going to bring down the DPS for some of the repeating crossbow builds. Many shot. This is a huge change to many shot. This ability has been completely redesigned. This is how it functions now. For the next 20 seconds, you add your base attack bonus times 4 to your double shot and range power. This ability puts 10,000 stars on a 30-second cooldown. Next, before I talk about that, let's go to 10,000 stars. This ability has also been redesigned. For the next 30 seconds, you add your wisdom ability score to your range power, and you add your monk level times 5 to your double shot. This puts mini shot on a 30-second cooldown. Cooldown 1 minute. So while a lot of people, this has been a big problem for years, many shot and 10,000 stars, munchers, as they're referred to in game, have been kind of the king of the range builds for a long time because they can take advantage of both 10,000 stars and many shot. Now with these changes, they can still take advantage of both having many shot and 10,000 stars, but not to as much of an extent, because now using either one of the abilities puts the other on a 30-second cooldown. Now I just want to note and point out that this cooldown does not cover the other ability completely. So for example, mini shot has a 2-minute cooldown, but using 10,000 stars only puts it on cooldown for 30 seconds. Vice versa, 10,000 stars has a 1-minute cooldown, but using mini shot only puts it on cooldown for 30 seconds. So it's not like you can't still have a good advantage from having both abilities, from having a muncher build. It's just, it's not going to be to the same extent as you could prior to this change. And this change has been made primarily to help bring down the muncher builds, because a lot of players have complained, and I kind of agree, that it doesn't make sense for a monk to be the best range build in the game. A lot of players, particularly ranger players I've seen, have complained that, hey, shouldn't my level 20 arcane archer be competitive with a monk in terms of using a bow? So this change is going to help bring them down to the same level. And I just want to point out that this is not nerfing munchers into oblivion. Munchers are still going to be a great build. It's just bringing them down to a point to where they're now kind of in the same class, or at least that's the intent, as it seems to me to be, as the ranger class and perhaps some other range classes. Next is mechanical reloader, rogue mechanic enhancement. The alacrity for the non-repeating crossbows is now 30, was 40, and this is a nerf to rogue mechanics. It's no secret. Rogue mechanics have been overperforming. It certainly seems like it to me, and to everything I have read. So this is going to be an attempt to help tone down their DPS a little bit. Pulverizer, legendary dreadnought. The bonus to critical threat range for bludgeoning weapons is now an insight bonus, so this helps it stack with more things. I believe this is actually a buff. Someone correct me if I'm wrong here, but this seems like a buff to me. Next is improved critical. These feats now add a bonus to critical threat range based purely on weapon type. And I won't read the rest to you, but instead of improved critical doubling your critical threat range, it now adds a flat figure. So this feat is being changed from a multiplicative one into an additive one, and this is really to address the problems of improved critical, people getting ridiculous critical bonuses from multiplicative effects. And this is kind of the same theory that they did with the healing app change when they changed that from multiplicative to additive. This just helps smooth out some of the ridiculous advantages you can get from a multiplicative system. Let's go. Keen also got the same treatment as improved critical, which was expected. It functions. Keen is basically having improved critical as a bonus on a weapon. So it's basically getting the same treatment as improved critical. Next, let's go to armor changes. And basically in these armor changes, the developers have nerfed heavy armor essentially for everyone except for fighters. So let's talk first about armor changes. The amount of physical resistance rating that armor provides has now been changed. Heavy armor now increases physical PRR by base attack bonus times 2 and no longer adds MRR. And this goes for 1.5 for medium and 1 for light. And there is no longer any MRR bonus from wearing heavy armor. And this is a nerf just because, as I've complained in the past, and I applaud the developers for making this change, right now in the game currently, Heavy armor is just way better than evasion to the point where it just doesn't make any sense to go for evasion because heavy armor is so much better. So this is an attempt to bring heavy armor down to the point where evasion becomes more competitive. Now also, in response to these armor changes, they have introduced some really nice buffs for fighters to help that class out. Fighters are a class that's struggling. It's no secret, fighters are definitely struggling, and I just want to say that these changes by no means are serving to be replace a fighter pass. They're still planning to do a fighter pass sometime in the near future. But let's look at the feats. There's tactical training, combatant mastery, and supremacy. All of these feats, as you can see here on the screen, add a certain amount of DC to your tactical feats. And I just want to point out, all of these feats stack. So if you take all of them, you can have a total of plus 20 to your DCs. And I also want to point out that these all have minimum required fighter levels. The best one, the tactical supremacy is 16, and then mastery is 12, combatant is 8, and training is 4. And I also want to point out that there is no prerequisites for these feats, so it's not like you have to take the lower tiers like tactical training to get to tactical combatant. You can just take one of these feats. If you want, you can wait until fighter level 16 and just take tactical supremacy for the plus 8 to your DC. So you don't have to take the plus 2, plus 4, and plus 6 in order to take the plus 8. You can take the plus 8 alone by itself, or any of these just alone by themselves. Say if you splash 4 fighter levels and you just want the tactical training, you can just take this. There's no kind of, well, it's the first tier here, so that's kind of a dumb thing for me to say, but just overall, you don't have to take any of these feats to take the other ones. And there have been some similar feats added for fighters for heavy armor, and this basically is going to add back the nerf, that a lot of the nerf, if not more, that they are inputting with heavy armor. These feats give you bonuses to MRR and PRR for wearing heavy armor, and again, these are all fighter only. They have fighter level prerequisites that are listed here, as you can see. Heavy armor champion, which is the best one, adds plus 12 PRR and MRR while wearing heavy armor. So this is even better. This is like a much better version of the epic DR feat. So this is even better than some epic feats, which is a little out of whack. It kind of shows you that I think a lot of the epic feats need some tweaking, but that's another topic. And again, all these PRR and MRR boosting feats function just like the tactical feats. All of these stack, and none of them have they have fighter requirements, but none of them have prerequisites. So if you want, you can just take heavy armor champion. You don't have to take any of the other ones to get the higher version. And if you take all of them, they stack for a total of plus 30 to PRR and MRR. So we're kind of seeing what these feats really are doing is giving fighters a meaningful option for their feat selection. Right now with fighters, the big problem is fighters have all these feats, but they have nothing to do with them. And this is helping to solve that problem. Fighters are now going to be able to achieve a advantage in PRR and MRR and tactics that no other class is going to be able to get from these feats. Okay, another gigantic change here at the bottom. Divine Grace. Divine Grace now provides a maximum bonus equal to 2 plus Paladin level times 3. This is a change that has been talked about for a long time, and it looks like the developers are finally going to pull the trigger on it. The problem with Divine Grace, and one of the reason I love this nerf, is Divine Grace is way too front-loaded. You get all of the benefit from only taking 2 Paladin levels, and before the Paladin pass, this was the issue, one of the big issues as to why there really was no reason in taking more than 2 Paladin levels. You get so much from just 2 Paladin levels. What this is going to do is basically take that benefit you get from Paladin level 2 with the Divine Grace and smooth that out between the rest of the Paladin levels to give more of an incentive to take more Paladin levels. And this is also to, help smooth out some of the pain that Paladins are going to see from the Holy Sword nerf. This change will give high level Paladins an advantage in saves that no other class is going to be able to get. But at the same time, it's not like your 2 Paladin splash is now destroyed or your 3 Paladin splash is now destroyed. What this does is still gives you good benefit from just taking 2 or 3 Paladin levels. It just doesn't give you all the benefit. So say you have a 2 Paladin level splash. The new Divine Grace will now give you a +8 to your saves, a +8 cap to your saves. So that would be 2 plus 2 paladin levels times 3 is 2 plus 6, which is 8. And I just want to point out that this is a maximum bonus, so you're still going to have high enough charisma. Say if you have 2 paladin levels, but you only have enough, your base charisma bonus is still only, say, +6. You won't get the whole +8. You still have to have the enough charisma to get the bonus. This is just introducing a ceiling based on your paladin levels to the Divine Grace, to the benefits you can get from Divine Grace. Okay, next we're going to go down to some Warlock nerfs. Warlock has been, obviously, which has been overperforming according to the developers' calculations, and which, from me reading on the forums, has been overperforming based on player feedback, is being toned down. On the left side here, you can see an old current spell power scaling of Warlock abilities, and on the right, you're going to see the new spell power scaling. So I'm not going to read every one of them to you, but you can see on the screen that many Warlock abilities and cone shapes or Eldritch Blast shapes have been toned down a bit, some more than others. So basically, Warlocks are just seeing basically a straight DPS decrease. And Severlin, I believe, also went on to point out some very other good. That was it for basically the nerfs. But Severlin made a second post in this thread, which talked about really the reasons for some of these nerfs, and it also served to help calm players down that may feel bothered or really disappointed with some of these changes, because no one really likes nerfs. They're not fun, but they are needed at times. And he also points out that, first of all, that game and class balance is an ongoing process. And I just want to point out to any of you guys who do feel let down because, say, your class has been nerfed, or say you picked up a paladin or a ranger after the pass, and you're disappointed because some of the power has been taken away. Severlin's pointing out here that class balance is an ongoing process, and any buff you receive is never guaranteed. Don't ever think that just because my class was passed and was given all these abilities that it will never be taken away. You've never been promised that. All abilities in game are prone to being taken away or added upon as the developers see fit. And they also point out that that Swashbuckler is their current measure of melee effectiveness. So they're looking at classes that are performing in DPS above Swashbuckler to perhaps bring them down, and classes that are perhaps below that to be brought back up. They also point out that classes like that Barbarian, Rogue, and Rangers class abilities aren't quite as strong as, say, the CC and self-healing and, say, survivability benefits that classes like Bard and Paladin have. So it's not like they are aiming for everyone to have the same DPS as Swashbucklers. They also are recognizing that certain classes like Barbarians have less options in other areas, so they are expected to do a little more DPS. I'm not going to read the rest to you. If you'd like to read it, you can. But he kind of goes through some of the history of what feedback they've received from players and how they have been responding. And he also points out some of the goals and some of the other reasons for making these changes. So guys, I hope you do take a look at these changes and give me some feedback below. Let me know what you think. But overall, I want to say that this is a really great thing for the game, in my opinion. And I'm saying this even though my build is going to be heavily impacted by these changes. I'm currently running a 2-weapon fighting cleric that wears heavy armor, so I'm going to do less DPS and have less survivability as a result of these changes. But I still love these changes because I think they're definitely needed. It's no secret that the game has gotten much too easy, and I've in many of my videos have criticized heavily the developers for this, and I'm glad that they're finally getting some of these overpowered abilities and bringing them back down to earth. So guys, please comment below. Let me know what you think about these changes, if you like them, if you hate them, and also please go to the thread and voice your opinion on these changes on the forums and actually post and tell the developers what you think, because they're still listening to player feedback. As always, guys, please give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and you can also catch me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Axel311. See you next time.